Welcome back to Rose Red Studios, where we talk about all things storytelling. And this week we are specifically talking about comic creation and, more importantly, what you can do based off of what I do to create comics faster. And I know there are some pros and cons to this, and we will discuss that at the end. But if you're like me and you have a full-time job and a house and a life and a dog that takes roughly the same amount of care as a toddler, producing comics quickly is important. That is the reason that I am able to get one out every single week. And my primary method for creating comics every single week quickly is I use assets. And more specifically, my characters themselves are assets. So to start off with, I'd like to note that I make a weekly slice of life comic about that dog right there. And they are very episodic, and I can have as few as 2 panels all the way up to at most like 10 panels. I stay pretty limited in the range, and if I have a longer thread I'm going through, I'll make it several comics rather than one extra long. So if you are doing a story-driven, a little bit more plot-driven weekly comic, some of these things can be adapted to your style, but they are very easy for me to adapt because of the slice of life nature of mine. But we can talk more about like how this goes for different styles of comics. So what does it mean that my characters are assets? That means that I have my characters drawn usually in 3 to 5 different positions, and I am able to use those characters, those specific positions over and over and over again. So a lot of times when I'm creating a new comic, all I have to do is grab my asset character and drop them into the panel, and then I can just change the expressions on them rather than having to redraw the character entirely. Now, there are some comic creators who don't like to do this because they think that it lessens their drawing skills. And I will fully admit that I can't just immediately sit down and draw out my characters without like some sketchiness to it. Like I'm not confident enough to like sit down at a table in front of other people and draw my characters. And for some creators, that's really important to them. They want to be extremely good at the drawing aspect so that they can, create something right off the bat. For me personally, it's more important to be able to like weekly produce this story. And this style of, management is in essence what enables me to weekly produce this story. And so that's just more important to me. You have to decide what's important for you and your comic and your style. But in the meantime, let me show you exactly what it means to create assets.
All right, so let's take a look at my character assets, which as you can see, I have quite a few built up by this point for all the different characters. I have a lot of characters that show up, and it took me about 10 episodes to really build up enough where this was making it easier. And so you kind of do have to, at the front end, do a fair amount of work and draw all of these characters in their various different usable positions. And then when I need to do a new one, because I'll always end up where you'll have like a position that you don't have yet, I have this wireframe just aside for myself, and I've used this to design a bunch of different types of dogs, and then I can also use it to kind of figure out where limbs and the head and tail and everything would be if I need to like recreate a new character or a new position. Now, one thing that's really, really important when I'm doing in this style of assets is my characters have 2 layers. They have the color layer, which is just, I guess, obviously all the color, and then we have the line layer. And I keep these 2 layers separate at all times. The reason being, if I want to change the the expression of the character, first you have to select the right layer. But the expression of the character is on the line layer. So I can very easily make a quick change and the entire character makes a complete change. And so that way I'm not having to worry about messing with the background colors or anything like that. I can just do a quick change to the lines and you've got a very dramatic change to the character. So you're not looking like you're actually reusing the same image over and over again, because the character's expressions are very, very versatile in this style in particular. So as you can see, like for each character, I have specific poses. Like, I have sitting Casey, I have standing Casey, I have joyful Casey. But again, I've used this one multiple times and just changed the expression. It's very easy to do in this style, and that makes my life so much easier. I've got a pretty good library at this point built up, so I rarely have to do another one.
Okay, so now that I've shown you what it means for me to create an asset and how my characters are assets, I wanted to do a quick roundup of like how this can apply to other types of comics. Because again, slice of life is different than doing like a, plot-driven story. So even if you can't make your characters into assets, you can make some things into assets. For instance, your backgrounds. You can have a certain number of backgrounds that you've created that you can use over and over again in the story to help lessen the amount of time that you're spending on that. I've also seen some character-driven stories. The artist will create the face outline, and the face outline will be like they create either an asset or they actually make a stamp with their stylus. So the face front, the face side, the face 3/4, and they can just tap and they have that, and then they can draw on the expression. And so that just lessens their time on that at least a little bit. Some do it with the expression themselves. If they know that they have an expression of the character that they use repeatedly, then they make that into an asset or into a stamp that they can just tap on the screen. They've got that set, and then they can create from there. Again, this is not applicable to every comic out there, but I feel like we can all look at our comics and find ways that, we can lessen the time a bit. Because no matter what you're doing, what style of comic you're doing, how you're creating it, the time aspect is a big thing. And we all need to work for ways to be able to create consistently. And to create consistently, if that means that you find ways to cut corners, or you find ways to cut corners here so you can put your time into the things that are important to you, that's what we all are looking for. So I hope this was helpful. I have links and bios to my comic. It's A Working Dog's Life. I'd love it if you checked it out, and I will see you next time.